Hello, I'm Casey Dinges, Executive Advisor for the American Society of Civil Engineers. Thanks for joining me today for a discussion on raising the grade for America's inland waterways. My guest today is Janey Smith Camp, Research Associate Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Vanderbilt University and Associate Director of the Vanderbilt Engineering Center for Transportation and Operational Resiliency. Welcome, Janey.
Hi, Casey. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. Janey, in March, ASCE's 2021 report card for America's infrastructure gave the nation's infrastructure an overall C- grade, up from the 2017 report's D+. 5 critical infrastructure categories saw improvement from the previous report, including the inland waterways system. First, what exactly does the inland waterways category encompass, and how do these systems affect our economy?
Well, Casey, as you know, the inland waterway system is a vast system of locks, dams, and navigation channels across our nation. It includes the Mississippi River system, as well as the Columbia, Sacramento, and San Joaquin systems in the West. We have 12,000 miles of navigable waterways in the U.S., which a lot of us as engineers like to refer to as the water highways. And then on the economic side, the inland waterway system is great because it's the most efficient form of transportation for bulk cargo. Thinking about aggregate, sand, even fuel and things like that, petroleum products, and agriculture. $1 invested in the inland waterway system can lead to $2 to $3 of economic activity. And then efficiency side, if you can imagine 70 trucks being taken off the highway to move those cargo and commodities, one barge can accomplish that. And we're seeing how the inland waterway system can handle and provide some redundancy to other transportation systems as we deal with the Columbia pipeline outage this week. Many people don't know. Many people don't realize that petroleum products have moved by barge for years on the inland waterway system. I'm in Nashville, so Middle Tennessee is one of the recipients of this benefit. We have a spur line that comes up into Middle Tennessee from the Colonial Pipeline, and in times of disruption, petroleum products can move into the Nashville and Middle Tennessee region on the Cumberland River by barge and then move to the pumps that we all access by truck for that last mile. So the inland waterway system is a great, efficient way to move commodities and get trucks off the road or provide a redundancy when other modes of transportation are down.
So if you will, it's a critical third surface transportation system. Everyone thinks of the interstate highway system. People may think of freight rail, but this is a super highway on water.
Absolutely.
Why do you think the grade in this specific category has improved recently?
Well, we've seen some real investment by Congress and the inland waterway system since the last report card that came out in 2017. And part of those appropriations that have been placed in the inland waterway system has led to a reduction in unscheduled lock closures. So these are not the scheduled lock closures for maintenance and repairs, but instead we have unscheduled lock closures that can create major disruption for commodities moving. In this last report card session where we looked at 2017 to 2021, we only had 5,000 hours of unscheduled lock closures for this period, when the previous report card period saw as much as 18,000 hours of unscheduled lock closure downtime. We've also seen investment in some major projects. A lot of people don't realize that the inland waterway system is owned and managed by the federal government, and some of these projects are huge and require a lot of funding. And in this report card period, we saw the completion of the Olmsted lock and dam, and Congress paid 85% of that.
Yeah, tell us where the Olmsted is.
Oh, I want to say Illinois.
Ohio?
It's on the Ohio system.
Ohio River. Yeah, I meant which river. Okay.
Okay. But funding for those types of projects comes out of the Inland Waterway Trust Fund. And with Congress picking up more of the tab on that one, that meant those funds could go to other projects.
Good. The grade improvement is good news, but certainly a D plus still isn't a grade to be very proud of. So what are some of the biggest challenges we're facing with the inland waterway infrastructure right now?
Some of the big challenges are we still have a lot of unscheduled delays. 5,000 is still a lot of hours when cargo can't move through locks and get to where it needs to go. And so that may mean that cargo is sitting waiting to move through the locks or having to move by truck or rail to get to the end user, which puts more trucks on the road, and there's even environmental impacts of that. And so we ultimately need adequate and consistent funding for maintenance and repairs on the locks and dams, and just capital investment to ensure that those systems are functioning properly. Most of our locks are beyond their 50-year design life. So regular maintenance is necessary, and often that's, kicking the can down the road. Maintenance is not, the big shiny new thing that everyone wants to see. It's, the low-hanging fruit that needs to be done.
You mentioned the 5,000 hours of lock closures. While an improvement, that must still be kind of an economic headwind. I know ASCE, he's done economic studies, the failure to act, and that sounds like a classic one, because those are costs that are either borne, by the shippers that have to be absorbed by them or just passed on to the consumer. Plus, stuff might get delayed in getting to where it needs to go.
Absolutely. Those costs are transferred to the end user and consumer. And many of those costs are passed on to shippers and, thinking about agriculture, even the farmers that are trying to move products, their profit margin is going to be lower when they're trying to ship agriculture to the end customer.
Yeah, the system's critical for the agricultural sector, for grain, movement of grain to export markets, for sure. So what are the potential consequences of neglecting to address those challenges?
Well, Casey, you alluded to it. There's significant economic challenges. On average, we lose about $44 million due to these delays in the system because of the outages. And the lack of adequate funding for maintenance and rehab just contributes to additional deterioration of the system and potentially more unscheduled outages that, you don't plan for it. You can't stockpile. You can't find the efficient and cost-effective workarounds when you have these unscheduled lock outages. And it can be a huge impact to the shippers and also, the farmers and the consumers. As an example, and we mentioned this in the report card, the LaGrange Lock and Dam on the Illinois River, when it had an unscheduled lock outage, it affected 135 counties. And we don't think about, the secondary and tertiary impacts of some of these outages and lack of investment in the infrastructure. But 18 states were affected, and potentially up to $2 billion in additional transportation charges that ultimately get passed on to the consumers.
Yeah, it's interesting that you could be a farmer like on the Missouri River, which feeds it in the Mississippi, or a manufacturer on the Ohio River, which also feeds into the Mississippi. Yep. And hundreds of miles away from you, there could be something going on the Mississippi that could affect your ability to run your business.
Absolutely. And it's a trickle down effect, especially if you have outages, high up in the system. It can affect, not just upstream, but downstream also. So there's lots of impacts.
So what can civil engineers do to continue raising the grade?
I'm glad you asked. We can do a lot of things, but the main thing is to be a voice to help promote our infrastructure and the need for investment, so that we don't continue kicking the can down the road and delaying, the repairs and maintenance that are needed. Ultimately, as engineers, we try to promote the public good, and part of that is providing for public health and safety, and trying to protect the infrastructure that serves the people. So being a key contact and, participating, reaching out to your elected officials and being a voice to say, hey, this is why this infrastructure is important and we need investment.
Can elected officials and city leaders support infrastructure improvements of the inland waterways also?
Absolutely. So they can serve as liaisons and help educate their constituents and the public. They can also be involved in, understanding what the benefits are to their local economy. Like in the example of LaGrange, thinking about those 135 counties that were affected, you need to know as an elected official how these outages are going to affect your citizens, your constituents, and jobs in the economy there. The inland waterway system is unique in that it's federally owned and managed, but we are all impacted by outages on these systems.
Yeah, my experience over the years has been that mayors, county leaders, lieutenant governors, everyone I think understands the importance of inland waterways specifically, and the infrastructure more broadly. And it's tended to be a bipartisan or multi-partisan issue, has yet to break down politically.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that we can do to promote the need for improved infrastructure?
Absolutely. Like I said, being a voice is important, reaching out to elected officials and saying we do need investment in these systems. And it's not, the inland waterway system is not unique compared to other infrastructure systems. We need investment across systems. It's just the inland waterway system is not something at the forefront of people's thoughts because we don't see it every day in much of our activities. President Biden has introduced the American Jobs Plan, and there's potential there for investment in infrastructure like the inland waterway system to improve the system so we can have more efficient transportation of commodities and goods that we all rely on. So I'd say use the infrastructure report card as, a resource to educate yourself. I personally love the failure tax studies because it breaks it down to the local level, the household level, what the impacts of investment or lack of investment means to an individual household, to help people understand and help champion the need for investment because it ultimately affects all of us.
Thanks for pointing to the failure tax study. And just to remind folks out there, the average family is suffering a hidden tax every year of about $3,300 a year because of the current, shall we say, D+ state of the nation's infrastructure, including the inland waterway system. So it really is a pocketbook issue, but sometimes it's hard for people to connect these vast infrastructure systems with their own personal economic situation. But $3,000 a year means a lot to a lot of people.
Absolutely. I think we have a unique opportunity now to change that equation. And hopefully we can do that.
Yeah, there are still, I would say, positive negotiations going on in Washington right now between Republican leaders and the White House to move ahead on this. So it still looks positive.
Yeah.
Janey, thank you for joining me today for this valuable discussion on improving our inland waterways.
Thank you so much for having me, Casey. I'm happy to participate in this.
Great. So for more information on ASCE's Interchange series, visit asce.org/interchange. Thanks for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time on ASCE's Interchange Live.